Now, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who believe they are too smart to ever get scammed. But I promise you, if this lady walked into your home, she's leaving with your social security number. Meet Elizabeth Holmes, the woman who scammed the world out of $10 billion with the promise that she was going to change the entire medical field. She lied, and it all started because Elizabeth had a problem even from a young age. She loved money. When she was a kid, her parents asked, "Girl, what do you want for Christmas?" She looked at them and said, "Stacks." Now, the thing is, her parents weren't broke. They had money, but she wanted more. She started going to Stanford University to study chemical engineering, but she started checking her pockets. She said, "Hold on, I'm broke." She went to her professor and asked, "Professor, when do I start getting the real racks?" The professor looked at her and said, "Well, the real racks, as you put it, is our contribution to science." She said, "That's broke talk." So she leaves to study abroad in China to be amongst the real bag chasers. But eventually she decides she doesn't want to work for anyone else. She said, "Matter of fact, I'm just going to start my own business." And that is when Elizabeth decides to launch a company creating a new medical device. To be more specific, and you need to listen to this next part closely, you know, how when you go to the hospital, you get vials of blood drawn so a doctor can figure out what's going on with your body. Well, Elizabeth's plan was to make a machine where all you'd have to do is get your finger pricked and the machine would scan you almost instantly. Now, the problem is that actual blood analysis machines are huge, sophisticated, and require so many parts that her idea was pretty much physically impossible. In fact, her professor told her exactly that. Elizabeth said, "Impossible for you, maybe, you brookie. I'm gonna figure it out." Elizabeth drops out of school. She starts telling people about her company so she can start raising capital. And remember what I told you at the beginning of the video? If she walks into your house, she's leaving with something. Her neighbor gives her $500,000. Her parents start throwing cash at her too. In fact, in just a few months, she raises $7 million and her company, Theranos, was born. Some of the richest billionaires on Earth start joining her. People who used to work for Apple, CEOs, politicians, they all start throwing money at her. She's valued at around $30 million basically overnight. But now that she had the money, they asked, "Girl, where is the machine though?" She said, "Huh? Oh, it's coming, it's coming." She creates a research department and rushes in. She says, "Yo, where's my machine at, y'all?" They told her, "Girl, I think your professor was right. This is tough." She said, "How do you know what my professor said? You weren't in that part of the story." "It doesn't matter, make my machine." They said, "All right, girl, but it's the weekend. We'll be back Monday." She said, "Weekend? Boy, if you don't get in the lab?" Oh yeah, Elizabeth was a tyrant. She told them if you aren't with it, you gotta get out of the way. Matter of fact, she hires an entirely new research team and tells them, "Hey, whoever makes my machine is my research team. Whoever doesn't, you're fired." So her old research team starts busting their ass. But it didn't matter, what she wanted to create was impossible. Her chief financial officer figures that out. He starts looking at the numbers. He said, "Elizabeth, we are worth $200 million right now, but we don't have a machine." She said, "You don't have a job. You're fired." She fires him on the spot. He rushes over to the board of directors. Remember, the CEOs and billionaires? He tells them, "Well, check your pockets, y'all. Elizabeth is scamming." They said, "What? That's our job to stop that." "Elizabeth, get in here right now." Their plan was to figure out what was going on and throw her out. But what did I say in the beginning of the video? She walks cool as a fan. She walks into the boardroom. They said, "Elizabeth, where's the machine? Where is my money?" Now, I don't know exactly what she said. But what I do know is that after that meeting, she convinced all the board of directors to stay. She convinced them a machine was on its way. And she convinced them to give her a majority stake in the company, so she could make all the decisions and they could never question her again. She then looks at her employees and says, "If anybody else wants to run their mouth like that CFO, you're fired and you're getting sued." Everyone stayed quiet. Now, at this point, her company is worth about $10 billion. She starts to get really famous. And here's where things start to get wicked. She wanted more. Walgreens pulls up to her. They said, "Girl, we saw you on TV." She said, "No pictures." They said, "Well, what about a check?" They give her $140 million so her machines can be placed in their stores. So she takes the check, goes to her research department, and says, "Okay, I need a couple of machines for the Walgreens store." They said, "Did you build the machine? Because I don't see one in this lab." She said, "Okay, you're fired. Anybody else?" Her scientist said, "Elizabeth, there is no machine." She said, "Okay, but Walgreens gave me some samples that we need to test." They said, "Elizabeth, there is no machine." She says, "What do you mean?" "I see a machine right over there." She decides to use regular blood testing machines that hospitals use, hacks them, and then pretends that her machine did the work. Walgreens says, "Amazing. When can we get the actual machines in the stores, though?" Elizabeth said nothing. When the deadline came, she just didn't give them anything. People started saying, that's a little suspicious. See, at this point, it had been about 10 years since she created the company, still no machine. And she had made a lot of enemies. So people, including her employees, start talking to an investigative reporter. Elizabeth finds out. She rushes over to the reporter. She says, "Stop the story or you're getting sued." The reporter says, "Girl, I work for the Wall Street Journal. My boss is Rupert Murdoch. He's got $20 billion. We are not scared of you." But remember, she has some of the richest people in the world on her board? One of those people was Rupert Murdoch. She goes over to him and says, "Stop this article from coming out." He said, "Nah, I believe in my team. They're going to tell the truth." Oh, and they told the truth. They told the world she was scamming. Elizabeth, though, cool as a fan. She said, "That's cap." Then she gets a knock on the door. She said, "Who is that?" They said, "It's the FDA. We came to do a surprise inspection on your laboratory to see what's going on." She said, "On today?" They said, "Surprise." They investigate her laboratory and find out her machine doesn't work. And it all starts crumbling down. Government agencies start piling on her. Investors begin to sue the hell out of her. She even gets sued by the state of Arizona. Because of all the fake tests she conducted on people, doctors need accurate tests to diagnose people, and hers were fake. She loses hundreds of millions of dollars. She said, "Well, at least the FBI hasn't swooped in." And then the FBI swooped in. They said, "Girl, don't even say nothing. Put your hands behind your back." Oh yeah, the FBI had been investigating her. They already had their case. She was facing 22 years. Now, something I didn't mention was she had a business partner she was in a relationship with named Sonny. The FBI came down on both of them. She basically says that Sonny influenced her, and she starts the trial pregnant, basically getting as much sympathy as possible. Sonny denies it. He said all she wanted was paper at all times. "I'm a bag chaser too, but that girl is wild." The judge said, "And that's going to be your only line in the story." 13 years. Elizabeth said, "And what about me?" The judge said, "You know what? You were facing 22 years, but we're just going to have you do 3 months." She said, "Okay." The judge said, "And 11 years. She said, "Why did you say it like that?" He said, "Don't tell me how to do my job. Take her away." And well, there it was. As far as prisons go, she got locked up in a pretty nice one, but it is still prison. And just remember, there are a lot of people who deal in the business of selling dreams. But sometimes if it sounds too good to be true,